This is Optimal Finance Daily, episode 1611, My Crash Course in Personal Finance by Jordann with MakingSenseOfSense.com. And I'm your host and personal finance enthusiast, Diana Merriam. This is the show where I serenade you with the sweet sounds of personal finance knowledge from some of the best blogs on the planet, with the author's permission, of course. But for now, let's get right to today's post as we optimize your life. My Crash Course in Personal Finance by Jordann with MakingSenseOfSense.com. I didn't really become obsessed with personal finance until after I'd graduated from university, specifically when my student loans came due. But post-secondary education didn't come without its own financial lessons. I went into university knowing about as much about money management as I did about advanced statistics, but I came out knowing more than I'd like to about both. There just wasn't enough money. My crash course in personal finance happened in my first year. As a student going to school without any parental financial assistance, I was relying on student loans to get me through. I stayed in residence and I had a meal plan that was prepaid. So my first year financial management was limited to figuring out how I was going to be able to buy beer or go to a movie on the weekend. A baby budget. I was just recovering from the trauma of my first exam period when I realized I was running out of money. I'd never budgeted before, so I was just spending as I needed to, which as a first-year student was a recipe for disaster. So I took a crack at budgeting. My very first budget was hilarious. Basically, I knew I had X dollars of student loan money that wasn't taken by my tuition, books, or residence fees, and 4 months left of school. So I divided that number by 4 and tried not to run out of money before I ran out of month. I'm really lucky that I had a residence meal plan to rely on. I hear it's hard to survive by eating air. As I made my way through university, I eased into the world of personal finance, mostly out of necessity. I had student loans and I was going to a very expensive school in an expensive city. There just wasn't enough money available to ignore my finances. After I moved out of residence and into my own apartment, I got more sophisticated with my budgeting tactics. My budget began to flesh itself out. More line items were added for rent, utilities, and special events. It was still a rudimentary system, but I was coming up short at the end of the month, less and less. Then came credit. I got my first credit card in January of my second year. And I still remember the feeling of excitement that my brand new $500 limit credit card provided me. Oh, the possibilities. I still remember the very first thing I charged to my card, a brand new pair of boots to keep my feet dry while I sloshed back and forth to my co-op job downtown. I think I had it maxed out in a month. This credit card, with its incredibly high interest rate, gave me firsthand experience in how much it sucks to pay interest on purchases. After spending a few months treading water on the payments and then still more months of hard-earned, low-wage income paying that sucker off, I banished my credit card to the realm of for emergencies only. What I didn't learn in business school. The thing that's the most ironic about my financial education in university was that absolutely none of it came from my business degree. I basically developed all of my knowledge through trial and error, and necessity spurred the evolution of my skills. While I was sweating it out trying to memorize the formulas to calculate compound interest and learning how to predict stock share prices, I was also muddling my way through my first budgets and hating my high-interest credit card. I never made the connection between what I was learning in school and what I was struggling with day to day. We'll call that a failure by the curriculum to connect abstract concepts to real-world applications and leave it at that. What I learned from university. I came out of university with $26,000 in student debt. That number seems high, but I'm really thankful that it wasn't higher. When it came to money in university, for me, scarcity was the mother of invention. I didn't have access to much credit, and I tried as much as possible to avoid asking my parents for help. I just didn't have it, so I had to be careful with my pennies. So I budgeted, and I'm so glad I did. While $26,000 in debt sure seems like a lot, if I hadn't been forced to learn about personal finance or had been given easy access to credit, it would have been much, much worse. I've already paid off $10,000 of that debt since I started paying on my loans 10 months ago. I owe a lot of my ability to be frugal and disciplined with my income to what I learned about personal finance in university, whether I wanted to or not. You just listened to the post titled My Crash Course in Personal Finance by Jordann with makingsenseofsense.com. Plato once said that necessity is the mother of all invention, and I think that rings true here in Jordann's story. Like many of us, Jordann had to learn about budgeting and mindful spending because there simply wasn't enough money available to not pay attention. And while that can be uncomfortable in the beginning, it's important to remember that you're building skills and habits that are going to serve you very well in the long run. When things are less tight and you're able to put money towards building wealth versus just covering your basic expenses, that's when the real fun begins. It's unfortunate that most of us don't learn about basic personal finance in school. I'm sure you've been told that you should save money, but the why, how, where to put it, and most importantly, the mindset that even makes saving possible is largely overlooked. Fortunately, there are many ways we can educate ourselves these days, from books to blogs, and yes, with this podcast. Trial and error is also a great teacher. I'm not sure I would be where I am today if I didn't experience some financial pain in my 20s. It motivated me to educate myself, dig out of debt, and create systems that would make it unlikely for me to fall into the same trap in the future. So if you're kicking yourself for your own financial mistakes, stop it. You'll be much better served by redirecting your energy towards fixing the mess you find yourself in, because it absolutely is possible to create a better financial future. And that will do it for today. Have a great day and weekend, and I'll be back here tomorrow where your optimal life awaits.